Hello and welcome back to Short Story Focus. Thanks for stopping by. Tonight I'd like to talk to you about Waystation Magazine, a magazine of space opera. Waystation was put together by Jason Ray Carney, who has also put together in the past Whetstone, which has about 8 editions, I think, and is devoted to sword and sorcery. And he has also put together Witch House, which is devoted to the weird and horror. And as well, he has done the Keen Blades novellas. So Mr. Carney has a lot of great irons in the fire, and that's all to our benefit. But tonight I would like to talk to you specifically about Waystation Magazine, because as well as having a bunch of great stories in it, it also has one short story in there by me. So I was fortunate enough to write a story that Mr. Carney and his team decided to publish. So the title of that short story is Eschaton Cycle. And tonight I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my short story. Waystation is concerned with bringing kind of the old school approach to space opera. Modern space opera has tried to maybe embrace some of the more scientific ideas associated with hard science fiction, and also different types of character development and other things that have all been great improvements to it as an art form. But this is a little more of the old school approach. This is more action than talking, right? More daring do than anything else. And so it's kind of got more of a pulpy feel to it, which also makes it a lot of fun to write. The word limit for the short stories in Waystation was, I believe, the upper limit to be 2,500 words. So this is clearly a story that you could write in 1 or 2 sittings and probably edit and get it sent off, no trouble. So that's one of the nice aspects about the magazine, is that the stories should come easy and be fun to write, and they should also be a lot of fun to read. Based on this first edition of Waystation Magazine, I would have to agree, they're a lot of fun to read. It's a great edition loaded with a bunch of fun stories. I recommend them all. It's good stuff. My story within Waystation Magazine is called Eschaton Cycle. And so, as you might guess, there are some religious overtones to the story, but the religious aspects of it are based on something that would have come out of a far-flung society living in the deep future of humanity, where we are greatly altered and have astounding abilities that would appear godlike now, but are quite ordinary to them. And this far-flung outpost of humanity lives around a black hole. So they live just outside the ergosphere. Their entire lives are built around this kind of living and thriving around this black hole environment. So I mean, it's of course something that would be completely unlikely, but also fascinating to ponder that a society might be able to work something like that out. And that's the kind of fun, kind of wool gathering / extrapolation that you can do when you write a story like this, when you write something in the space opera vein from the pulp era, and you bring that forward all these years later with the knowledge that we have about science. It makes it very interesting and a lot of fun to write. In the story, there's a main character who is a paladin kind of character. He's a guard for his community, and there rises an existential threat to the survival of all of humanity living in this kind of planiform, arcology type outpost. And so when they're faced with this great enemy, they have some decisions to make, and all of those decisions have incredibly high stakes, and it's all life or death. And because the story is so short, there's really no time to monkey around. There's not a lot of time for character development, and there's not a lot of time to think it through. This is a story that really only has room for action. So from beginning to end, I went along with the mandate of the writer's guidelines to write action, to be not as dialogue heavy as action heavy, which is kind of what they were looking for. So those are easy to adhere to. And when I wrote the story, I used the approach that I had learned from author Dean Wesley Smith on his concept of writing into the dark. And writing into the dark is related to his understanding that you don't need to outline a story in order to write it. One of the ideas in writing a story is that if you don't know what's coming next, then the reader probably doesn't know what's coming next. And if you're having fun writing the story, they're going to have fun reading it. Now, one of the things I do when I write is I do keep the 7-step outline in mind. I just don't actually write anything down on it. So in my story, for instance, I had a character who was in a place, in a location, which is two things as an author you need to come up with immediately, and then he has a problem. And then, of course, you have 2 or 3 try-fail cycles where he's trying to solve the problem, and then this final do or die, literally or figuratively, and then the denouement and the validation at the end. So if you bring all those elements together in a short story, even a 2,500-word one, sometimes you get good results. Now, another thing that I did with this short story was that I wrote it according to Heinlein's rules, which was that I wrote it, I made sure it made sense, I made sure it was properly edited, as far as grammar goes, and then I sent it off. And any changes I need to make, I would do those according to editorial directive. And so in this case, I did get some advice and some input from the editors, although none of it was in order and it was all just suggestions. I really liked the suggestions. It's a very nice team there at Waystation, and I went ahead and followed their advice, and I felt like it actually enhanced the story a little bit and added some depth. And of course, depth is something you always want in your story. In the story itself, the main character faces this existential threat to all of humanity in the realm and in the region with which he is living. And I never make it clear in the story whether they are the last of humanity, but they are certainly a lone outpost of humanity living where they live. And so what he faces in there in dealing with this threat is that he has a lot of ultimate choices to make, and he has very little time to do it. This is all happening at a compressed scale within the story. The speed at which things happen and the time frame are described in just minute kind of microseconds, and I kind of felt like this super compressed, super fast timeline and set of occurrences kind of relate itself back to the almost gee-whiz technological appreciation that was in those early stories. And of course, the religious overtones and definitely undertones of the story relate themselves to Christianity and Gnosticism and other religions. And I kind of brought those characteristics into that to give a sense of where the characters are in their development, but also the idea that the thing that they're dealing with is actually evil. So that we have this good versus evil story. And that just makes for fun writing and fun reading. Okay, sometimes this black and white definition of things like that is a lot of fun, and that was kind of what I was going for. So I recommend that you check out my story, of course, but what I recommend is that you check out Waystation for all of the other stories too. There are a bunch of great stories in there, and writers who are well worth investigating and seeing what else they're doing with their careers too. I'm sure there's lots of good stuff going on there. Also, I wanted to mention that Waystation Magazine is having a second volume or second edition coming out. So there has been a call for submissions to Waystation, and they're looking for more space opera. So perhaps you have a story burning inside of you just waiting to get out. It's only 2,500 words. You could probably write it in a day or two, maybe 1 or 2 sittings. You could have it done and edited and ready to go, and just send it off and see what happens. If you get a chance to read Eschaton Cycle and you'd like to talk to me about it, please feel free to leave a comment. I'm always happy to engage with my viewers here on Short Story Focus. And other than that, I'd like to thank you for stopping by, and have a good day.